This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Under the out of the stretch, and now Shared Belief being asked the question by Mike Smith and Joe Talamos now after F with Candy Boy to the extreme outside as the two favorites running strongly here in the Los Alamitos Derby. But take a look at Shared Belief, last year's champion 2-year-old male. Shared Belief is striding along powerfully here. Mike Smith and Shared Belief coming inside the final eighth of a mile with a 5-length lead, and Shared Belief now home to Rome for Jim Rome at the Jungle Stable, and Shared Belief going to dominate the field and horrify him here in the Los Alamitos Derby.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. I'm Mark Cassano. On this morning's show, a Hall of Famer has been sidelined. We will review a trio of stakes races highlighted by a first for this show, and we will welcome in three very special guests. Mr. Jason Servis, who has Hangover Kid for the Bowling Green and tight end touchdown for the Parks Dash. Mr. Dale Romans, who's going to have a busy afternoon around the country, but we are concentrating on Molly Morgan in the Delaware Handicap. And finally, Mr. Ed Stanco, the owner of Princess of Sylmar, who will start in the aforementioned Del Cap as the solid favorite. So all of that and much, much more if you stay with us for this, our July 12th edition of the program, which is being sponsored by Parting Glass Racing, Saratoga's original racing partnership. Visit them on the web at partingglassracing.com. Good morning once again on a lovely summer Saturday morning. Settle in, relax. Got a good show for you over the next 55 minutes or so. Our final in-studio show prior to the Saratoga meet. We begin this morning with news that jockey Gary Stevens announced that he will be sidelined for at least 6 months as he undergoes and recovers from knee replacement surgery. The 51-year-old Stevens is optimistic, although uncertain, that he will be able to return to riding. He was forced to give up riding twice already during his career due to knee issues. And California Chrome is coming home early. The Kentucky Derby and Preakness hero will be returning to trainer Art Sherman this coming Thursday, which is about 2 weeks earlier than originally planned. Sherman said California Chrome has put on some weight, his foot is improving, and as Art told us in an interview about a month ago, California Chrome will likely prep for the Breeders' Cup Classic in a stakes at Los Alamitos, the September 20th Los Alamitos Mile. Now, the backup is the September 27th Awesome Again at Santa Anita, which I believe is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic. And Honor Code, who was sidelined earlier this year due to a tear in his right hind suspensory, will be shipped to Fair Hill later today to begin his comeback in earnest. His trainer, Shug McGahee, is hoping to get him back to the races by November, but not in the Breeders' Cup. And Ruler on Ice, who upset the 2011 Belmont Stakes, has been retired. I believe Ruler on Ice won 4 races during his career, including the Belmont, but only one of those victories came after the Belmont. And Streaming, who won last year's Hollywood Starlet, has been retired after having run only 4 times during a very brief career. Streaming suffered a leg injury. The 2 newest additions to the Saratoga Hoofprints Walk of Fame were announced this week. Gallaret won Saratoga's Wilson Handicap in both 1947 and 1948, along with the 1948 Whitney, and Jump Great Zacchio won the New York Turf Riders Cup in 1980 and 1982, along with the 1980 Lovely Night. And noted veterinarian Dr. Doug Byers has died at the age of 70. Now, I did not know Dr. Byers personally, but from what I've been told by people within the sport who knew him, Dr. Byers was considered one of the pioneers in equine veterinary medicine and one of the most highly respected equine vets in the world. Our condolences to Dr. Byers' family. And finally, the Fugue, who was second in last year's Breeders' Cup Turf versus males, has been retired. Her trainer, John Gosden, said the multiple Grade 1 winner had injured herself in her last start, a dull sixth in the Coral Eclipse Stakes. And in all likelihood, that led to a rare dull performance. All right, our race of the week, the Los Alamitos Derby. And in the 22 and a half years we've been on the air, I'm pretty sure this is the first race we've ever looked at from Los Alamitos. The reason we're showing it, number 5, Shared Belief, last year's champion, 2-year-old male. He was the 7-10 favorite, but he was making his first ever start on dirt. He was stretching out to 1 1/8 miles off a single 6-furlong sprint. You know, not exactly an ideal situation. According to the tote board, the main danger to Shared Belief would come from Candy Boy, number 7, who was the 3-1 second choice. For the call of the Los Alamitos Derby, here's Ed Burgart.
And away they go in the $500,000 first running of the Los Alamitos Derby. Martin Garcia wants the lead with Can the Man. Eddie's first from down along the inside also came away well, and so did Shared Belief in a perfect spot in the early going with a mile to the finish. Tornado M from down along the inside is now joined by Top Fortitude. Candy Boy is traveling nicely for Joe Talamo behind the leaders, and the stretch running Friends with K-Mill is about 10 lengths off these leaders. On past the 7/8 pole they go, and Can the Man has a short lead. Shared Belief is now making a move on the extreme outside, and tucked in from down along the inside is Eddie's first. Running back and forth to the extreme outside comes Top Fortitude, and in between horses, as they make the way towards the 5/8 pole, we have Tornado M. Candy Boy continues to be patiently ridden by Joe Talamo, now taken to the outside. Candy Boy making up ground with Friends with K-Mill. They make the way in towards the far turn with about a half mile to the finish, and it's Can the Man and Shared Belief. Now let's see, Candy Boy continues to make up good ground to the extreme outside. Tornado M between horses, and Eddie's first from down along the inside. Top Fortitude and Friends with K-Mill. They make the way on towards the 3/8 pole, and Can the Man now begins to shake clear. Shared Belief is right on his tail. Candy Boy is now making his move to the extreme outside. These three now begin to run on strongly. Tornado M's running back and forth. Eddie's first is dropping out of it as they make their way onto the out of the stretch, and now Shared Belief being asked the question by Mike Smith, and Joe Talamo's now after F with Candy Boy to the extreme outside as the two favorites running strongly here in the Los Alamitos Derby. But take a look at Shared Belief, last year's champion 2-year-old male. Shared Belief is striding along powerfully here. Mike Smith and Shared Belief coming inside the final 1/8 of a mile with a 5-length lead, and Shared Belief now home to Rome for Jim Rome at the Jungle Stable, and Shared Belief going to dominate the field and horrify him here in the Los Alamitos Derby.
Shared Belief, currently stalking in second for Mike Smith and Jerry Hollendorfer, repels a brief bid from Candy Boy and goes on to a pretty convincing 4 1/4 length score over the second choice. Now, just how good you think Candy Boy is will likely play a part in what you thought of Shared Belief's performance, and that's certainly fair. But when you consider Shared Belief was making only his second start since last year, remember, he had missed several months of training early this year due to a foot problem. And when you consider that his prep for the Los Alamitos Derby was in a 6-furlong sprint, I think this effort looks pretty good and should be one which he'll move forward off. Remember, this was also his first ever start on dirt and at 1 1/8 miles. All in all, his connections have got to be very pleased, and 1:47.01 appears like racehorse time. Folks, every 1/4 mile was run in under 24 seconds. Now, Jerry Hollendorfer told us on last week's show that he was not interested in putting Shared Belief on a plane bound for Saratoga. So the next start for Shared Belief will come versus older rivals in the Pacific Classic at Del Mar. I think I read where there's $1 million bonus for any horse, and of course this would strictly be shared belief, who wins the Los Alamitos Derby, the Pacific Classic, as well as the Breeders' Cup Classic. Here in New York, a couple of big money turf stakes beginning with the Belmont Derby, restricted to 3-year-olds for $1.25 million, and the 2-to-1 favorite, one of the European shippers, number 4 Adelaide, from Aidan O'Brien. For the call of the Belmont Derby, here's Tom Durkin.
And they're off in the Belmont Derby. And Galo Ward striking out for the lead. Bobby's Kitten's got some speed, and Flamboyant very keen to get that lead, and Flamboyant make that Pornichet very keen to get that lead, and the blinkered Pornichet is runaway speed here, opens up by 2, and very difficult to handle is the French Pornichet. Toast of New York gets a spot inside. Now up for that second spot, Galo Ward. Toast of New York runs along in 3rd. Bobby's Kitten is 4th. Galo Chap 5th on the outside of Ireland's Adelaide, 6th on the rail. 2 lengths back to Flamboyant, who's reserved at the back of the pack, along with the unhurried Global View, Longshot Sheldon, and Mr. Speaker. Runaway speed here for Pornichet. Opens up by 6. Jose Ortiz trying to do everything he can to settle this one down, and he puts on the brakes, and the others move in, and they move in quickly and just run right by him. So in between horses, it is Galo Ward. Coming back is Pornichet. On the outside is Bobby's Kitten. Those 3 across the track, 48 and 2 of the opening half mile over the good going here. Adelaide rides the hedge into the fire turn, moving very comfortably with a half mile remaining here. Toast of New York has been maneuvered to the outside for clear running, and now he is starting to advance as they round the fire turn. Then Flamboyant, who's now 6 toward the inside. Galo Shop followed by Mr. Speaker, then Global View and Sheldon as they make their way toward the top of the stretch. Pornichet, Bobby's Kitten, and Galo Ward, those 3 will hit the quarter pole together. Adelaide right in behind, and now Adelaide finds a seam, and Toast of New York is cut loose too. And Galo Chap is coming on the outside. And farthest out, it's Global View. Mr. Speaker's come up the rail. Mr. Speaker coming through on the inside of Adelaide, and they're coming down to the finish. Adelaide and Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker got it.
Mr. Speaker Shug, Jose Lescano settles early, saves ground throughout, gets through inside, and outfinishes favorite Adelaide, who also set a good inside trip to upset the Belmont Derby at 23.5 to 1. Now, the only reason the winner was that big a price was because of his last start, where he finished last of 5 in an absolutely dreadful effort in the Pennine Ridge, a race where he was odds on. That day he raced inside under pressure on the lead, but in here was purposely taken back well off the pace, a style which appears to suit him quite nicely. Now, I saw no excuse for Adelaide. Good try, but no excuse. With the turf somewhat less than firm, the original posted running time of 1:57.94 was somewhat unbelievable. You know, these are 3-year-olds. They aren't good enough to run that fast. And when you add in course condition, which was less than firm, you know, it was pretty much impossible for these horses to run that quickly. The actual running time, 2:01.18. I don't think Longines could be too thrilled that the incorrect running time was posted. And what makes that a bit unusual is there was no portable rail up. Folks, if you've watched this show over the decades, I've told you time and time and time, when the portable rail is up, particularly internal fractions, are never accurate. But there was no rail up, and they still got the incorrect running time. Belmont Oaks, 3-year-old fillies, restricted to 3-year-old fillies for $1 million, and the slight favorite at 2.5 to 1, an American, number 2, Room Service. The 3-to-1 second choice, number 7, Excellence, one of the shippers from Europe. For the call of the Belmont Oaks, here's Tom Durkin.
They're in the gate. And they're off. Rosalind and Summer Solo. They're split by Flying Jib, and on the outside, Sea Queen with some early speed, and 2 Wonderfully. So they make their way for the first turn. Sea Queen taking the initiative here. Wonderfully following her. Just a Wonderfully's outside is Minaret up close and running along in third. And then it's Summer Solo who settles in behind the lead down toward the hedge. Flying Jib is now moving up from 5th on the outside. Recepta 6th. And then farther back, it's Rosalind now back running along in 7th position. Excellence is near the back of the pack along with Goldie Esponi. And America's Best Hope, Room Service, is last as they make their way toward the backstretch run. It's a 24-4 opening quarter mile for Sea Queen. Sea Queen on top here. Rod Ortiz Jr. trying to harness in some of that speed, tracked intently by Wonderfully, who in turn is tracked intently by Minaret. Flying Jim is a well-settled 4th. Then Summer Solo. Opportunity inside for Goldie Esponi in the white-hot hands of Jose Lascano. Now about 6 lengths from the lead here with 5 furlongs remaining. And then it's Recept on the outside. French Filly, Excellence, now about 8 lengths from the lead. Still at the back of the pack, Room Service and Rosalind. Half-mile remaining, 3/4 run in 1:14-2. And it's Sea Queen still in control around the far turn. Wonderfully now making a serious attempt to get at her. There's a break of another 3 lengths. And then it's Minaret running third as they come to the quarter pole. Goldie Esponi down toward the inside. Flying Jib in an all-out drive, but is still 5 lengths behind. Excellence is 6 lengths behind at the top of the stretch. They're entering the final furlong. Sea Queen trying to pull it off wire to wire here. Here comes Minaret. Minaret with a bold run at her as they come into the final 100 yards. Sea Queen and Minaret who keeps on pecking away, and it is Minaret who takes the lead. Minaret got it. Sea Queen second.
Minaret, currently sitting in third for Joel Rosario and Chad Brown, rallies to defeat Sea Queen by an expanding 2 lengths to capture the Belmont Oaks, and reversing the finish of the Wonder Again, which was the New York prep for this valuable stakes. Chad Brown had told us on last week's show that Minaret was getting better and better. She'd been working very well, and she received a beautiful trip under Rosario. Now, the early pace in here, much slower than the Belmont Derby. The opening 3/4 here, 1:14.57 as compared to 1:12.65, nearly 2 full seconds slower, but the final running time of 2:01.64 was less than a half second slower than the boys, meaning mid-pack and deep closers, such as Room Service, the favorite, had very little chance in here because of the pace scenario. And we are up to our first break. When we return, Mr. Jason Servis will join us as we go to break the Dwyer for 3-year-olds and the entry of number 1 Kid Cruz and number 1A Captain Sirius, the 7 to 10 favorites. So we will take a look at the Dwyer to the break. Back with Jason Servis right after these messages.
In the Dwyer, a stumbling start for Ulaanbaatar. Captain Sirius comes out in stride. 'Tis Dark, just to his outside, is gaining ground. A break of 3 to Kid Cruz is going to be kept close to the pace today. Usually comes from well out of it, but today is only 3 lengths from the lead, while running 4th on the inside of Spot Now 5th, and that stumbling start puts Ulaanbaatar at the back of the pack. Gaining ground on the outside, down toward the rail, Captain Sirius. Up and in between those two is the favorite, 'Tis Dark. Those 3 through the opening quarter mile in 23 2/5 seconds. A break of 3. Back to Kid Cruz, who's being bustled along here midway down the backstretch run. Spot second to last. Ulaanbaatar is the trailer. So there's 5 furlongs remaining here. And at the fence, it's Captain Sirius. 'Tis Dark right at his throat latch. Gaining ground has now dropped a length and a half off them. The half was up 46 2/5 seconds. Farther back, Kid Cruz sent through on the rail. Kid Cruz called on for run now. At the midway point on the far turns, just 3 lengths from Captain Sirius. 'Tis Dark now gets a gentle reminder from Johnny Velasquez with 3 furlongs remaining. They're making their way toward the top of the stretch. It's still Captain Sirius. 'Tis Dark is put to an all-out drive. Ulaanbaatar on the outside, and Kid Cruz at the rail as the field turns for home. They've got to get Captain Sirius. Off the inside comes Kid Cruz. 'Tis Dark, not today. Final furlong. Captain Servis still there. Kid Cruz just keeps on running at him as they come down to the final 100 yards. Kid Cruz gets it. Kid Cruz a change in tactics today, and he beats stablemate Captain Servis narrowly. Close third, Ulan Bator and Spot.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
I got it. Watch me. I got it. Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout. I got something that tells me what it's all about. I got a move that tells me what to do. If you don't, brothers and sisters, then you won't know what it's all about.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Asano, and Kid Cruz for Linda Rice and Irad Ortiz Jr., a deep closer who was kept closer to the early pace, runs down entry mate Captain Servis to win the Dwyer by 3 quarters and probably earn a start in the Jim Dandy. Our first guest this morning has a pair of turf stake starters later this afternoon. He's got Hangover Kid going 1.5 miles in the Bowling Green, and he's got tight end touchdown going 5/8 in the Parks Dash. We welcome live via telephone Mr. Jason Servis. Jason, Mark Casano welcoming you to Down the Stretch.
Yeah, how you doing, Mark? It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Jason. Let's begin with the New York-bred Hangover Kid. I really like this horse. He is a neat horse who seems to handle any kind of turf condition. He seems to run well at almost any distance. He's grade 1 stakes placed. Talk to us about him if you would.
He's a homebred. My clients bred him and raised him, and when I first got him, I really felt that he was a nice horse, and I'm sure if you look at his form, you'll see how we've managed him, tried to pick our spots, and if we give him enough time, he almost always fires his best race, with the exception of 1 or 2. But he's been just a blast for the Taglientes. He's just been a terrific horse.
Yeah, I mean, he's earned $500,000. We are about to take a look at his last start. This is the Monmouth Stakes. Now, for our audience, he's number 1, but he's breaking from post position number 12. Jason, talk about this runner-up effort, if you would.
The post was a killer. I kept checking the scratches, thinking there's going to be more scratches, but it never happened. We just gave Sias did a great job getting him over and trying to save some ground, and we got lucky. We got through the whole, had a good trip. So we were real excited. I mean, we got the Breeders' Cup on the radar. If we could get some points and some big races in him, we'd love to go to California.
Wow, that would be exciting. Now, Jason, he entered the Monmouth Stakes off, a really poor effort in the Elkhorn at Keeneland. That was his first race over that turf course. We know that's a sand-based turf course. What in the world happened in the Elkhorn?
You got to throw that out. He had a temperature the next day. He was due to ship to New York, and we couldn't ship till he had to give him a few days, let his temp get back down. So he wasn't good. He was sick, and sometimes it'll take a race to blow that temperature out because the temp was fine that morning. So I mean, for me, that's a toss-out.
Yeah, that does sound like an absolutely legitimate excuse. Jason, he has run well in both of his starts over the Monmouth Park turf course. Is there something to that?
He's went on a soft turf. I think he likes it firm. We actually were really looking at the UN because he likes that turf. It's very firm. but I needed the extra week. I mean, the extra time I kind of was wanting, so that's why we're doing the Bowling Green.
How did he come out of the Mon mistakes? How's he been training up to this afternoon's Bowling Green?
I wish I had another 2 weeks, but we're trying to make the West Point, and if I don't run him for a couple more weeks, the West Point's kind of close for him, so we're going to do this, and hopefully he comes out of the race well, and we can make the West Point Saratoga, which he won last year.
Yeah, so Jason, would it be fair to say that this is not an ideal scenario this afternoon, that he might not be at his very best for the Bowling Green?
Yes, it would be fair to say that.
Okay. Today at Parks, you run tight end touchdown in the Parks Dash. He was claimed from you back on December 27th, 2012 for $30,000. You claimed him right back in his very next start for $35,000, and I'm guessing you're really happy you did.
To say the least. No, that was, going to California and getting beat a half a length, finishing second in the Breeders' Cup. I mean, it was been a great ride with that horse. Terrific.
Jason, unlike many turf sprinters, tight end touchdown seems to handle, just about anything from 5/8 to 6.5 furlongs down the hill at Santa Anita.
Do you have his lifetime PPs? I think he won 7/8, didn't he?
That I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's so unusual for most turf sprinters who kind of like either a particular course or a particular distance. What is his best distance?
Oh, I think probably 6 furlongs. I mean, he showed he didn't. I always felt he didn't have to be on the lead, and he's won off the pace. But his last race at Penn National in the Governor's Cup, when he laid fourth and then came on to win, I thought that really opened up some doors, not have to be pressured and be laying second. But I don't know what his best distance is. He's a pretty honest horse. I mean, I'm guessing 6 furlongs or something.
Well, here is his last start, the Pennsylvania Governor's Cup. For our audience, he is number 5, Javier up. As you mentioned, Jason, he looks comfortable racing just off the pace. Talk about this performance, if you would.
When we were trying to make the Dubai World Cup, and I had him in Florida, and I wasn't happy with him, and he wasn't doing good, and I probably should have never ran him down there, and I did, and he ended up with a temp and ended up in the clinic very sick, and the World Cup going to Dubai was out, and we stopped on him, freshened him up, and tried to get him back on the track. Which, winning off of going through all that was we got a lot of gratification of that. That was a lot of hard work with my team, and we were real happy with that race.
Well, that's a big race off the freshening, and considering everything he had gone through in Florida. Now, Jason, how did he come out of the Pennsylvania Governor's Cup? I see only one listed workout for him. Is he doing okay?
Yeah, he's not the kind of horse that I breeze regularly. There's some times when you can just kind of drop his head and let him maybe a strong gallop. I think he does a little better with that than breezing him on the rail, although I do breeze him on the rail periodically, but not like a normal horse.
And Jason, before we let you go, your nice sprinter, Rebo Bobo, who was second most recently in the Mr. Prospector, got in a little trouble early that day. What's going on with Rebo Bobo? What's his status?
Yeah, I was really upset about that last race. He kind of had a target on his back. Got one of the jockey that bothered him ended up getting fined $2,000 for that race. I mean, my horse got cut up pretty good and was on antibiotics. His back leg looked like a football. But he's over that, and he's doing good now. I was going to try and run in the Teddy Drone on that day at Monmouth Park. And if that goes well, we're going to try to make the state in September, Belmont. I don't know the name of it, but I think it's a $300,000 sprint. If he runs good there, we'll try to make Breeders' Cup.
Well, Jason, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. And all the best later this afternoon with both Hangover Kid here in New York and Tight End Touchdown at Parks. And we'll see you very soon up here at Saratoga.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Good talking to you.
Thank you, Jason. Jason Servis, ladies and gentlemen. And we are up to our next break. When we return, Mr. Dale Romans. As we go to this break, the Suburban. The 2-1 favorite, number 6, Romanche, who was a very fine third in the Met Mile in last. 3-1 second choice, number 5, Last Gunfighter. So we will take a look at the Suburban to the break. Back with Dale Romans right after these messages.
They're in the gate. And they're off. Ever Rider down toward the rails. Storm and Monaco looking for that early lead. He's got it. Storm and Monaco, Romanche right up there early. There goes Moreno with the rush. Moreno now looking for the lead. So now it's Moreno and Storm and Monaco going head-to-head for the lead. Prayer for Relief, and behind them runs along in third. Romanche has been reined in down toward the inside. Vijak very eager to go. And Vijak now moves up to fourth on the outside. Last Gunfighter is fifth and in between horses. Romanche is now back to sixth. I'm only about 5 lengths from the lead. Then Micromanage on the outside of a rider in between those two. Another 2 to My Loot, another 3 to an unhurried Norumbega. And the trailer is stretch running Zevo. Up the back stretch they go after a 23 and 2 opening quarter mile. Moreno is the leader. A firing line in behind. Storm and Monaco down toward the rail. Prayer for Relief in between horses. Vijak on the outside, close to the pace, fourth. And the pace is a strong one. It was a 46 and 4 opening half mile. Then paired up together, 4.5 lengths from that strong pace up front. A Romanche on the inside. Last Gunfighter's right next to him. Micromanage is starting to make a move as the field enters the far turn. And then it's My Loot now about 8 from the front. Ever Rider Norumbega has but 1 horse beaten, and that is Zevo rounding the far turn. Nothing left for Storm and Monaco. Now he throws in the towel. It's Moreno and Prayer for Relief. 1-2 with 3 furlongs to go. And Romanche is a menacing third as they make their way toward the top of the stretch. Then Zevo comes on the scene. Zevo's only 3 lengths behind with a quarter mile to go. Micromanage on the far outside along with My Loot. And then farther back, Ever Rider and Norumbega on the far outside. They're coming into the final furlong now. Moreno's got a narrow lead. Zevo keeps on coming up the inside. And then it's Prayer for Relief. A sputtering Romanche. And down toward the rail, Ever Rider. They're coming down to the finish. And it's Zevo who passed every one of them to win it. Won it by 3. Moreno was second. Close for third. Ever Rider, another long shot and a big prize he was. And Prayer for Relief.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
The big day is here. You've told everybody. You've dressed the part. Your heart is pounding in your chest. Your horse is rolling down the stretch. He's coming. He's closing. He's the winner! You're a winner with Parting Glass Racing. PartingGlassRacing.com. PartingGlassRacing.wow!
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Asano, and the New York-bred Zevo for Chad Brown and Jose Lescano wins his 6th straight by capturing the Suburban by 3 lengths over Moreno. Our next guest this morning, well, he nearly upset the Belmont Stakes with Medal Count. Later today, he's going to try to post a minor upset with Molly Morgan in the Delaware Handicap. We are joined live by a telephone by Mr. Dale Romans. Dale, Mark Asano welcoming you back to the show.
Hey, thanks for calling, Mark. First thing I want to do is apologize for standing you up a few weeks ago. I lost my phone that morning, and I never do that, and I hope you accept my apology. You've been too good to me for me to stand you up that way.
Well, we certainly do accept your apologies. That's a classy thing to do. Dale, let's begin with Molly Morgan. And as our audience takes a look at her last start, this is the fleur-de-lis, and Molly Morgan is number 2. Just my opinion, but this looked like the finest performance of her career by a pretty good margin. Talk about this effort, if you would.
You know, let's talk about Molly, period. She's a horse that is one that shows when patience really pays off in this game. And a horse that I've been involved with since she was a yearling. And you could just tell she was going to have a breakthrough race sooner or later. It took her till she was 5. You know, she was doing okay and paying her way. But the race the other day, I hope, is the race we've been looking for and takes her to the next level. I mean, when she cut the corner and Corey smooched to her, she just opened up as easy as a horse can run.
Now, Dale, it's interesting. As handicappers, we have to be a little bit wary of a monstrous performance like this, because does it mean she's going to regress in her next start? Does it mean it might have been an aberration? From the standpoint of you being her trainer, are there any concerns about this gigantic effort?
Well, no, if they've got a gigantic effort in them, usually, especially at 5, then they'll give you another one, and you can see that there's been a progression. It's not like a number that jumped off the charts from nowhere. So there's always been a little bit of a progression with her. I mean, in the same, Princess Sylmar is obviously the class and standout, but you could say 2 5s back to back on Ragusson's are going to be tough. Can she put 3 or improve off of that, or is she going to regress? So there's a lot of question marks, and these fillies are not as consistent as the colts. But even though she ran so big, I think you could see that race coming. The Grade 1 placing on Derby Day was big, and then she followed it up with a performance that proved that one wasn't a fluke, and now maybe she can step to the next level and really become one of the top mares in the country.
You mentioned earlier briefly she's now 5 years old. Is this the case where the maturation process is really starting to kick in at this point?
It is. And it's today's times in racing and what it costs to keep a horse in training. It's hard to wait around until they're 5 years old to become stake horses. But, you know, on a horse like her, she's shown us all the time. She was very pretty. She was a good mover. She had a late maturing pedigree. And, and everything came together. And then you're talking about a horse that went from probably 50,000 to 750,000 within the matter of this summer, and it paid off.
Dale, how'd she come out of the fleur-de-lis? How's she coming into this afternoon's Delaware Handicap?
Well, I was still on the fence about whether or not to run it, even as late as Wednesday. And Wednesday, then we set the tub at 5 o'clock. I walked down there and looked in the tub at 5:30, and it was clean, licked clean. That's usually a good sign. The horse is feeling good, doing good, and she's looked great on the racetrack. I'm over there. I mean, I think Sylmar definitely leads the race, but if she stubs her toe, we'll be running.
You know, Delaware can be a quirky surface. How is she trained over the racetrack?
Well, she really hadn't had a chance to do enough to let anybody know that she's going to like it or not. I wasn't going to go up there and work ahead of time. I left her here at Churchill and let her train here. And it is a quirky racetrack, so you just don't know. We'll find out today, and that'll be my excuse if she gets beat.
I mentioned during the intro 5 weeks ago you nearly upset the Belmont Stakes with Medal Count. Talk about that, Dale.
You know, Medal Count's been one that I've been an eye on ever since he walked in the barn. And there's been some races where he hasn't backed up my confidence, but he's starting to really get it all together. Just like Molly was talking about, as he's matured and gotten older, that Dynaforma pedigree is slow to come around sometimes, but he's finally putting it all together, and he's classically placed, and I think he'd have been second or third in the Derby if he hadn't had such a troubled trip. I mean, he got completely shut off at the Hayspo. His best races are in front of him. Right now we're pointing to the Haskell. Hopefully he holds it all together and gets us there and shows that he can win a Grade 1 on the dirt.
You know, Dale, I kind of thought you were going to go from the Belmont Stakes to the Belmont Derby for $1.25 million. Why didn't you go there? Is it because you're going to go to the Haskell?
Yeah, and there was a lot of discussion about going to the Belmont Derby, but that was a really tough race. Even though I think we would have been one of the favorites and legitimately had a big chance to win. We crammed a lot of races together in the spring, especially because we didn't have any Derby points until late. And with that schedule and such a big schedule coming up in the fall, I just felt like it was better to give him the time now between the Belmont and the summer stuff, and you still got 2 shots if you could go Haskell, Travers, something like that against straight 3-year-olds on the dirt. And then if we wanted to, we can make the move to turf. But it's so important to prove to people that he's the top-level horse on the dirt for when he goes to the breeding shed, that we want to run him in a couple more dirt races. And, this is the kind of horse I think can change the breed. He's a rugged throwback type of horse. He's the guy that has that Roberto sideline that's kind of died out on us. And if he does what I think he's going to do in the next second half of the year, he could really make an impact on the breed in the future.
Wow, that is saying a lot. Dale, a few weeks ago, you brought back Silver Max in the Firecracker at Churchill. Our audience is about to take a look at it. Silver Max, number 5 in here. This was his first start since a respectable 4th in last year's Breeders' Cup Mile. Why the lengthy layoff?
Because if you look at his schedule, he has never had a break. He started running at 2 at Saratoga and never took really any time off. And he ran against the best. And he ended up a Grade 1 winner last year. And we just thought it was time to let him rest, get relaxed. And then there's no reason to come back really early because the best turf races really starts in midsummer.
Yeah.
And if you're going to try to take on Wise Dan later in the year, you better be fresh, rested, and ready to go.
Your thoughts on his performance here in the Firecracker where he let him start to finish?
It's the old Max, and I just think that he's a phenomenal horse. I've only had a few like him that can cruise that fast and just keep on going. And he puts everybody in a quandary. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you go with him, you're probably not going to win the race. If you don't go with him, then it's tough to catch him. And it just puts people in a bad position. He controlled that race is packed with speed if you handicap it. And when Robbie came to the paddock and we were talking about all the speed, I said, just push the pedal and go because they're not going to be able to stay with him. And he was fit and ready, and that's what he did, and he made us all look good.
Dale, is this the type of comeback effort that you fully expect he will move forward off of?
This horse he keeps moving forward. I don't know what it is about him. If you look at him, he's a nice-looking horse, but he's kind of a plain brown wrapper. I think it's really his owner that's made him so good. He comes out here and checks on him every weekend. He's a 10-year-old kid here from Louisville sitting on the couch with me right now. But I think that's what makes the difference.
Now, you mentioned facing Wise Dan. Might that come at Saratoga in the 4-star Dave?
It's a possibility. I mean, we're going to discuss it as soon as I hang up the phone. And, Max, you want to run against Wise Dan? He shook his head. Yeah, he wants to try him one more time. So we might end up there.
Well, I think that's fantastic. If you do, we're going to have you and Charlie Lepresti on our August 9th show, and we'll have some fun. Dale, how many horses will you have here at Saratoga?
I'm bringing 30 up this year, just like I always do, and just like everybody. Can't wait to get there, and I'm sure about the middle of August I'll be ready to leave.
Well, listen, if you visit that winner's circle often, you're not going to be too anxious to leave. Dale, as always, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. All the best later this afternoon with Molly Morgan at Delaware.
Thanks for calling. Always good to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you. Dale Romans, ladies and gentlemen, and we are up to our final break. When we return, Mr. Ed Stanco will join us as we go to the break, the Belmont Sprint Championship at 7/8. The 2-1 favorite, number 3, Clearly Now. The 3-1 second choice, number 2, Central Banker. So we'll take a look at the Belmont Sprint to the break. Back with Ed Stanco right after these messages.
And they're off. Dad's Caps gets off to a sharp start. Saludos amigos. Palace with speed today on the outside, and up the inside comes Moonlight Song. Moonlight Song, Palace In between those two, Dad's Caps, and right up there too, Salutos Amigos, close to the pace in fourth. Clearly now is fifth on the inside. And then it's Mezzano right alongside him, 6 by 2. Then Big Screen 7. Central Banker is 8th. He's already 8 or 9 lengths from the lead, a long way back to late running Declan's Warrior. Moonlight Song rips through a 22 3 opening quarter mile. Dad's Caps hard on his heels, second. Clearly now just 2 lengths from the lead while saving ground down toward the rail. Palace on the outside, right next to Clearly Now. Just in behind, Salutos Amigos is trying to come off the inside, but Mezzano is keeping him pinned down. And then farther back, it's Big Screen far outside. Central Banker still about 7 or 8 from the lead as the field turns for home after a 45 2/2 mile. Moonlight Song, Dad's Caps right at his throat latch now, and Clearly Now is poised for the stretch drive on the outside, and here comes Clearly Now powerfully to take the lead at the mid-stretch marker, and Clearly Now is pulling away and pouring it on. Clearly Now with an arresting victory here, crushes the field, and a good field it was, by 6 lengths at the finish. A 4-way photo for second among Palace, Salutos Amigos, Moonlight Song, and Dad's Caps. Clearly Now in 1:19 and 4. That is a track record.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today. Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Asano, and Clearly Now for Brian Lynch, and Jose Lescano had a great afternoon. Finally stays out of trouble and dominates the Belmont Sprint by 6 1/4 over Palace and Salutos Amigos. 1:19.96 is a new track record, breaking the old mark of Left Bank. Our final guest this morning is a Schenectady native who owns one of the top racehorses in the land in Princess of Sylmar, who will go posted as the solid favorite in this afternoon's Delaware Handicap. We welcome in live via telephone Mr. Ed Stanco. Ed, Mark Asano welcoming you back to the show.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good.
To be back.
Nice to have you, Ed. I want to take you and the audience back to June
Mark,
7th.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ed, you got?
Hello?
Mick,
Hello?
Mick, he can't hear me. So we are going
Hello?
to... Ed, can you hear me? We're going to try to work this out. Ed, we will attempt to get Ed back. I could hear him. He could not hear me. Yep, we could hear him, but he could not hear me. So we will attempt to get Ed back on the phone. That should not be a major problem, and talk to him about Princess of Sylmar, who, as I mentioned, you know, it's a pretty good spot to be in, to be a very, very solid favorite for a $750,000 race, which is kind of in your backyard. Ed lives relatively close to Delaware Park. So, Ed, do we have you back?
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. Hopefully you can hear me.
I can.
All right.
Perfect.
Here we go. I want to take you...
Hopefully we don't have a slow start like that today.
I want to take you and the audience back to the June 7th Ogden Phipps. For our audience, Princess of Sylmar, number 6, breaking from the outside. Ed, talk about this tough beat.
Well, this was well, first off, the outcome of the race, I mean, we got close, but it was a great race. I mean, this was really the top field, and it was just terrific. But what really occurred in the race, Javier's strategy with Todd was to really try to stalk with Beholder. And if you'll notice, I think you're playing the race right now.
Yes.
What really happened was that the speed horse we thought would go out with closed hatches, but went out so far, you'll notice in that backstretch, the closed hatches actually gets to settle down in the garden spot, which ended up to be the perfect spot for her. And I'm not sure where you are in the tape, but you'll look and see Beholder gets up near closed hatches, but lets closed hatches go. Gary let her go, and it seemed to us anyway that Gary might have, and Javier, that Gary might have been a little more interested in where we were than hatches was. And so as we followed Beholder around the track, when it was time to move, Javier made his signature move, took the Princess to the side, and really started to pick up and gain traction. But at that time, closed hatches had just gotten the real. And to look at that analysis, if we were to do it again, would we do anything differently? No. I mean, that's just the way racing, that's racing. That's what happens. You have to pick a spot and go for it. So, it was just a terrific race. We got close. It wasn't really that. I mean, it was a disappointment, obviously, not getting the win, but not really. And I cashed on Tonalist at the end of the day anyway, so I left the track a happy guy.
Now, Ed, by design, Princess of Sylmar had a light campaign early in the year. The Phipps was only her second race in 7 months. Considering that closed hatches, who beat her ahead, had 2 tough races already going into the Phipps, might the light campaign have cost Princess of Sylmar in the Phipps?
I'm not sure. I mean, we had different strategies, if you look at it, because we had such a long campaign the year earlier. She really needed the rest. So Todd had decided to put her at WinStar for 6 months, let her really rest and, continue to grow, which she did. She put on 150 pounds with the idea that we would really try to focus a little bit more on the second half of the year. And closed hatches, of course, came along very well, was strong at the end of last year, had been lightly raced last year, so she was in good shape, and she, got the grade 1 in the Apple Blossom. So when I look back at it, I wouldn't say that, gee, if we had another race, that would put us in a better spot. I mean, the only thing I would say is the distance of the race. Maybe if it was a 2 jumps more, we would have had it. But if it was another 16th of a mile, I'm not really sure on that particular day.
All right, how did Princess of Sylmar come out of the Phipps, and how's she been training up to the Delaware Handicap?
She came out of the Phipps as well as when she came out of the Alabama. I mean, she's right on top of her game. Her attitude is terrific. She's held her weight. She's gotten a lot bigger, when you'll notice, perhaps. And that, we see all the same signs as last summer. So we're very, very fortunate. She's not had any slip-ups, missed any days of training. And Annie Finney, who is her exercise rider at Belmont, tells me she loves to be on the track. So we're pretty thrilled.
Now, Delaware Park is, in your backyard. You don't live that far from there. I understand you're going to have a lot of folks at the track with you this afternoon.
That's right. I mean, all our neighbors that are down here in Pennsylvania will be going. Our family's here. They've flown in. And also, Sylmar Farm, where Betsy and Ronnie Houghton raised her, they're only about 30 miles away, and Betsy has told me that everyone that's ever worked on that farm are going to bring their family and friends. So we're estimating there's definitely going to be a few hundred people. And it's exciting because that's where, outside of Saratoga and going to Belmont on Super Saturday, that was the place we went on Saturdays and Sundays when we were down here in Pennsylvania.
You're going to be a pretty solid favorite in a $750,000 race this afternoon. I mean, how do you approach that? Is there a lot of additional pressure on you, or are you thrilled to be odds-on for $450,000?
Well, there seems to be a lot of pressure, like in the Alabama, in that when it's a race you're expected to win, it makes you a lot more nervous. I will tell you that. I'm pretty nervous right now. But at the same time, as I said to Todd, you're in a one race, and if you're not a favorite, it's not a bad position to be in. But by me saying that, let me be very clear. It's not any kind of a walkover race. I mean, I handicapped the race. I think Molly Morgan at 5, woke up in her last 3 races. She's improving in every race. I would say she might be 1 notch below us. 1 notch, only 1. And certainly, if the way she's improving, she could be strong. You've got Flashy American. And don't forget Bella Galante, Michael Dubb's horse, because that's the only early speed in the race. And so she could go out and maybe make something happen. So, you know, every race is a race. You never know. And believe me, we understand, appreciate that.
Let's talk briefly about the rest of the year. Saratoga's Personal Ensign up next.
Well, Todd and I look at it this way, you know, very much so, 1 race at a time. When you're a 3-year-old, it's a little different, but now, because of the great year last year, let's just do 1 at a time. So if she comes out well, the Personal Ensign would be the next race up, yeah.
Now, originally, the Breeders' Cup Distaff this year, again at Santa Anita, was not in your plans, but you've changed your mind. Talk about that.
Well, the way we look at it is 1 race at a time. And so Todd and I have talked about that, you know, because she's only going to have a few races this year, if she's healthy and if she's happy, we would consider it again. The other thing that's going on is that, and I don't make an excuse about the track surface. It was extremely hard last year, but that, I think, wasn't the big issue. I think it was more that morning she looked overheated in the paddock that afternoon. She just, you know, I think she was tired, and it all came together that way. You know, so things just didn't work out. And by the way, Beholder just ran a phenomenal race and deserved to be the champion and get the award. So, you know, it was just, but I don't think it was as much the track surface. But this year, they're working on redoing that surface. And I think if it plays more fair than it has in the past, you know, it might be another good thing for us. So, you know, if she trains well and if Todd thinks she's capable of going, we would consider. I already paid the $100,000 nomination fee last year, so, you know, we can get in.
Now, Ed, in the final minute we have, we're hoping to see Princess of Sylmar race in the Personal Ensign, but earlier in the meet, you and the Princess are going to be involved in a special charity at Saratoga. Tell us about it.
Okay. Yes, on Sunday, August 3rd, the day after the Whitney Stakes, that's the weekend Fasig-Tipton does their weekend festival with their sale coming up. And so co-sponsoring with them and New York Racing Association, we're going to have a day which is Princess of Sylmar supports St. Baldrick's Foundation, which is the largest non-governmental funded research foundation in the world. And why that's special to me is 3 friends of mine in the reinsurance industry started it 12 years ago. They shaved their heads in at St. Patrick's Day, and the idea of trying to raise money for children's cancer. They raised $50,000 that day. Last year, they raised $30 million or so.
Oh, my God.
And it's a worldwide thing. And I felt the Princess is so good to us. She's been a gift and a blessing that we want to find a way to give back. So we're making her part of it. There's going to be a St. Baldrick's. People can come to the track. There'll be autograph signings and hats and posters and that sort of thing. So we're excited about that.
That's wonderful, Ed. We will look forward to that. We will look forward to seeing the Princess later this afternoon. And as always, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch.
Thank you very much, Mark. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks. Ed Stanco, ladies and gentlemen. Well, time to thank all the folks who helped get this week's show, our final in-studio show prior to Saratoga on the air, our associate producer, Julie Hoxie and Mick Richards here at the Racebook. Back in the control room in Schenectady, Dan Hayes directed, Landis Burgess on audio. Thanks to Pat Peretta for his pre-production work. And thanks to this morning's guests, Ed Stanco, Dale Romans, and Jason Servis. And thanks to our sponsor, Parting Glass Racing. Saratoga's original racing partnership. Visit them on the web at partingglassracing.com. Opening day at Saratoga next Friday, the Schuylerville, the opening day stakes, open house tomorrow. Hopefully the weather will hold. So ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you so very much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. Enjoy all the racing action this weekend here at Capitol from coast to coast. Have a wonderful upcoming week. And from all of us here at Down the Stretch, we'll see you next week in Saratoga.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.